This is the April meeting of the Affordable Housing Commission. The Athens City Affordable Housing Commission is a commission of city government established to review best practices, investigate community affordable housing models, and identify needs and opportunities within Athens city limits to advance decent, safe, sustainable, affordable housing for all city residents. The commission is tasked with providing advice and guidance on measures and policies that influence access to and needs within the local housing market. Affordable housing, term affordable housing refers to affordable housing for all demographics, not specifically low-income housing. It includes market rate housing, as well in workforce housing, as well as low-income housing and senior housing. So it looks like today we have quorum. We have just about everybody here today. Did everybody receive the minutes from, they got sent out a little bit late. Did everybody receive the minutes from last meeting?
Yep.
Okay. Do we need a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move to approve. The Megan's got it.
All right. Everyone in favor of approving the minutes from March?
Aye.
All right. Okay, so moving into city updates. Megan, do you have any updates?
I'll just state that the Welcome Home Ohio project is moving along. The building at 93 Hudson, the current city building, our departments are going through the material in there and basically auditing and moving things as necessary. The new storage building out on Kenny Drive is ready for things to be transferred, so we're just kind of moving through the materials there. We have a draft site plan as well that our code office is looking at for the sake of reviewing any necessary variances or whether or not it constitutes a minor or a major subdivision plan. So once that gets a little bit more formalized, we'll be sharing that out with the public and also scheduling a public meeting with the neighborhood to talk about the development and then also allow for interested buyers to come learn and see more about the project. So wanted to update you all on that. On the May 6th Planning Commission meeting, the new director of code, Tom Pyle, has invited the Ohio Recovery Housing Organization to come and give an informational presentation on how recovery housing works. And so we're really excited to have them as a guest. Currently, that conversation, over the past couple of months, the Planning Commission had been talking about zoning language to address that new use, creating a specific use for recovery residences. And per the recommendation of the city's law director, Lisa Eliason, there are some current court cases that are ongoing and could really provide some helpful feedback on our discussion. And so we are kind of putting that on pause and just regulating them as rentals until we have more information from those ongoing court cases. But we are excited to have the OHR group or ORH group as a guest for our May 6th Planning Commission meeting. So, great.
Megan, on Welcome Home Ohio, one of the questions that I've gotten from a couple of people is what the selection process will be. Has that been determined yet?
Yes. So if anyone is an interested buyer, they are welcomed to go ahead and reach out to me. I can get them connected with the developer who will then share more information about what it takes to be a qualified buyer. And at this rate, I've already had probably a handful or more people reach out. So that's very encouraging. And so our first phase of the project will build 8 units. And so it's a little bit of a first come, first serve with getting approval for the loan and mortgage. But of course, I would recommend they contact us first before moving forward with any sort of mortgage inquiry just to learn more about the program and its requirements themselves.
Thanks. City council updates. Alan's not here today. Solveig, I know you presented the presentation to city council. Do you have any other updates?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to talk about that a little bit
Okay.
later. Maybe that would be.
Yeah. Okay. Board of Zoning Appeals, the BZA heard one case, not housing related. It was related to a business use application. So not much from the BZA either. Area housing and development and construction projects, the Ridges.
You talk about that. So, yes, I have been in meetings regarding what's happening with the Ridges. It looks like the approvals, the final approvals, will all be done this summer. Of course, we've heard that before, but now they're really confident that it will be this summer. And actually, they say that it should probably start some construction on the ground as early as late this year. So that's really good news. Now and Amy's been at these meetings too, so you can add to or whatever, and you can talk about the senior housing piece. But yeah, my understanding is that it's really finally getting done. One question I had, and this is to Megan really, and that is, they said that they could start the zoning changes now, so that hopefully, and there's not that much, and it's not that complicated or controversial, so that could be done at the same time as they complete the final paperwork. So I'm curious about any progress in that area.
I've not had any recent discussions with the developer on getting a zone change application in, but we did meet several months ago about it, and I believe that we landed on the B1 zone to be the most accurate or applicable zone for the uses they're proposing there. I don't want to say that that is exactly what they're going to move forward with, because it's not going to be for the entire campus. I think it was going to be the main building. But I can be sure to reach out to the developer and inquire as to his timeline for getting that zone change going.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that it would be B1. I mean, there's some discussion with the historic buildings of having restaurants and artist lofts, but also condominiums, which they spent a lot of time trying to work out the details about. So I don't know how that works. And then, of course, they talked about having the property along Dairy Lane, which they're saying should be senior housing. They're talking about townhouses, though I don't understand why they wouldn't be talking about condos, and that's a discussion I think we need to have. So, yeah. On that note, Amy, you want to add to all that?
Yeah. So senior housing is a small part of this discussion at the Ridges. I think of the 700 units that are planned there, 120, 30 will be senior friendly. And so some of those will be new builds that will have features that will help, older folks move in. They might not be set aside specifically for older folks, but they will be accessible. They're calling them age-friendly features. And so, and then the plan for the renovations, I think, is also to include some mixed income apartments. And so some of those will be market rate, some of those will be subsidized. And so those will be farther along in the process. I think they have to do some new builds first in order to help fund some of the renovation. But there is a group that is meeting monthly to specifically focus on the senior aspect of this portion of units that are being developed. And that's being coordinated by Age-Friendly Athens County Housing Subcommittee co-chairs and the Athens County Foundation. And so just to kind of think about in the planning phase what it would look like if it was age-friendly housing at the Ridges. The developer is at the table in those meetings as well. So very community engagement heavy kind of process. Because that is the thing that is happening right now, that is where some of that, where the efforts are focused, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. Most of the age-friendly efforts. But that doesn't mean there could be other conversations happening that we just don't know about.
Well, Building 24 is being considered, because it's a separate building, the one right next to the auditorium.
Yes.
That one that looks really bad and is a mess. It needs a lot of work. But there's a possibility of 6 luxury condos, and there are people who really want to move there, so want to push this along. So that's another aspect of it.
I have a question or a point of clarification for you, Megan. Is B1 mixed use in city code?
Inherently, it can be, but it can also allow for residential uses on the ground floor.
Does sound like it would be. Okay.
I think the biggest issue with the B1 up at the ridges, the existing structures are taller than what our boat controls allow, but I don't think that would be a problem in the long run.
Well, except my understanding is that restaurants and whatnot would be on the bottom floor of the, and you said residents on the bottom floor.
They're just allowed in addition to businesses on the ground floor.
Oh,
In a B1,
okay.
in a B1 zone.
Okay, I
Yeah.
just want to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Do we have anything else for senior housing? Kind of covered a little bit of that as related to the ridges. Any other updates, Sylvie, Amy?
That for now, I mean, we keep hearing, it'll be done next month. or something. It looks pretty positive at this point. So, are there any comments from,
Yeah, anyone in the attendance have any comments or questions?
Just to clarify, is it building 24 or 26?
24.
24?
24.
So shared and intergenerational housing.
Yeah,
Sylvie, do you
yeah,
want
I'd like to talk about that. I'm pretty excited about this. NPR did a piece on shared housing like a week or so ago, saying that more and more seniors are looking for housemates to kind of, share the load and the chores and company and all that kind of stuff. But also, around the country, there are communities that have intergenerational housing, particularly those that have universities. So the concept, just loosely, is that, grandma has a 4-bedroom house. She doesn't want to move because, her house was paid, she paid for it 30 years ago and she couldn't afford to move anyway, even to a smaller place. So, what can she do? Well, let's get a roommate. Or how about getting a college student, like a graduate student, who wants to move in, get lower rent, reduced rent for doing some yard work and some chores and, just sharing responsibilities for a house. And, 18-year-olds are not going to want to do that because, they want to get away from grandma, for sure. But graduate students, yes, they actually would like to do something, just saying. But graduate students really like the concept of, getting lower rent in exchange for relatively mild kind of helping around the house sort of thing. So I think it could be something positive here, and I think it's worth looking into. So a group of us, including Amy, are going to get together on April 29th at 2:30 at the Public Health Building, right?
Yep.
And there's several of us who are getting together to talk about that, just to kind of see what the options are and what we think and, share ideas and that sort of thing. And then in addition to that, I talked with Dr. Kathleen Sullivan, who is a political science professor, and she has a learning community class in the fall of, new freshmen. They're supposed to learn about the community. How about that? And we talked about the possibility, and I think we've nailed this down now, that her class would study intergenerational and shared housing as sort of a little class project. And, we would give them some guidelines of what we're looking for. They would, write some papers. Not a big deal, just, small things. And so they could do some of the legwork for this project, which I think is a wonderful model for any of the things that we're doing to get some assistance, because, You all have full-time jobs, you have busy schedules. This is an opportunity to use students and faculty and whatnot to provide service to the community, get to know the community better, have experiential learning opportunities, and hopefully by doing this, they, at the end of their little project, they can come to the Affordable Housing Commission, give a little presentation, here's what we found, here's what we recommend. Again, yes, they're young, but, they've been through high school, they should know how to do a paper, and we've got a professor who cares about that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that we can, I'm pretty excited about this. I'm hoping that this is something that we can do on an ongoing basis for certain kinds of projects that could use a little bit of legwork to the benefit of students, the university, the community, and us. So, anyway, that's my pitch for the day. We'll see what happens. I'll keep you posted. Amy and I will keep you posted. See how it goes. Any comments? Issues? Whatever? Thoughts? Recommendations?
Yeah.
You can tell me afterwards if you want to. All right, there you go. That's it.
All right. I wanted to share a little bit about a project. This is an SAOP and HAPCAP project in Gloucester that was started last year. I have some prints. There's 2 different versions through here. I don't have enough for everyone. And then if anyone in the audience wants to see these later, you can as well. This is, again, a grant-funded project. They had funding issues with the funding last year, so the project is currently on pause, but this is a good example of a type of housing that's becoming more popular, specifically in single-family neighborhoods, the cottage home concept. These specific units are targeted to be all electric and be net zero energy ready, so there's a sustainability component as well. But the cottage home concept is, the idea of this is using existing, building smaller homes on mostly single-family lots with shared common space. So in the 2 different projects, these are 2 different SAOP-owned lots in Gloucester. Comparable size to a lot of the single-family R1 lots that we have in the city of Athens. One of these concepts would be 2 approximately 900 square foot homes on a single lot with a shared common area in between. Roughly the same kind of scale and size as the neighboring single-family homes. And then the second concept is actually 4 units on a single-family lot, 2 duplex, what would be called stacked duplexes. So a ground-level unit and an upper-level unit. I think each of those units is maybe around 600 square feet. So a total of 6 units, compact, on 2 single-family lots. There's a number of, kind of advantages to this. One, this is a smaller housing product than you can typically reasonably build on a single-family lot, especially when you have higher land costs like we do in the city of Athens. So this type of housing is inherently more affordable, also allows for more density and more housing at a scale that's very similar and compatible with our existing single-family neighborhoods. And so, again, both of these are centered around, they're kind of situated around these shared common areas, common spaces. So each unit would have access to, front and rear yard with kind of these communal areas. This project specifically would be for the clients of SAOP, but this concept is, it's gaining traction in cities that are updating their zoning codes to allow more affordable types of housing, and it certainly doesn't have to be, this could be a market rate concept. Right now, within the city of Athens, I don't believe that there's probably really anywhere that this type of housing would be allowed, certainly not in R1. But we're seeing other cities across the country who are legalizing these cottage homes. It's an alternative to other, denser types of housing like townhomes or, the typical duplex, triplex, quadplex, that is, I think, tends to be more in line with the character of what we kind of see in a single family residence. And, that's often a pushback on allowing more density in single family neighborhoods is, people have concerns about maybe the compatibility of townhomes or apartments. These are really, these are really designed at the scale of a single-family home, but allow for more housing units, relatively compact and efficient, that'll be more affordable, whether they're for rent or for sale to be owner-occupied.
What's the square footage, did you say, roughly?
So the duplex concept, I think, is about 600 square foot for each unit. The idea is that one of those units would be fully accessible, and then the rest of the units would be designed with universal design principles, but not fully accessible. The topography of these specific sites makes it challenging. They're sloped sites, so accessibility, basically the idea is to do as much, incorporate as much universal design, accessible design as possible, but creating all of these units to be fully accessible would be a challenge.
So there would be elevators?
No, ground floor access to one of the ground floor units. Elevators add a significant expense
exactly. That's
to
what
any
I'm
kind of
asking.
project, right?
So you're saying only one of them would be?
So at least one of the ground floor units on the duplex site would be fully accessible. And I believe there's two bedroom and 3-bedroom concepts. Or maybe they're all 2-bedroom, I don't remember exactly. But yeah, and then the other units would have accessible or universal design features as much as possible.
Could it be street parking?
A mix of street and on-site parking, not, and that's actually that's a good question. One of the challenges with this type of housing is often parking requirements. So, with reduced parking requirements where you don't have to fit 6, 8, parking stalls on a site, I think each of these would be situated to maybe have two off-street parking spaces, and then any other parking would be on-street. That allows more of the site to be used for housing and for that shared open space as opposed to off-street parking.
And I know this is Gloucester, not City of Athens, but is this ACPG money that type of, or is it a
I
different program?
believe so.
Molly, I couldn't hear you. What did you ask?
I was asking if the grant funds that are kind of tied up right now is the Appalachian Community Grant Fund. Had some other projects that maybe were postponed.
I believe so. I know that they have projects with both AMLR grants or AMLR funds, I believe, as well as ACG. Is it ACG?
ACPG. Yeah,
ACPG. So I think this was ACPG, but I'm not sure on that.
And are these rentals?
These specific units would be for the clients of SAOP. So, but this concept is more broadly applicable to this type of housing is being built as for sale and market rate, or for sale and for rent housing in other places where it's been legalized.
And when it's for sale, how do they handle the property?
I mean, that would be up to the developer, really. This type of housing, could be an HOA, it could be, potentially subdivided. I think that would really be up to the developer. Yeah.
It's an interesting concept.
Well, a lot of people are looking for smaller places, partly for cost and partly for convenience. You don't necessarily want a huge house when you're either starting out or, towards the end of your life. You don't really need a huge house.
This is kind of, it's similar in some ways to an accessory dwelling unit kind of concept where you would have a principal structure, you would have a single family house and then add a smaller unit. But, this type of project is, these are typically ADUs tend to be more compact, although not always, and be more like, studio kind of apartment size, maybe 1 bedroom. These are a little bit more, these are at least 2-bedroom homes, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. And so these are more appropriate for maybe a small family or for other types of, renters or owners than some accessory dwelling units.
So where is this in the process of being developed? Where are we right now? Are there just the plans?
Yeah.
Is there a major developer already situated here who's going to move ahead?
So right now
on
it's
this?
paused because of the funding. So we're hoping that it's refunded this year and then it can move forward again. The construction would go out to bid, and SAOP and HAPCAP would be managing, I believe, that process.
Well, I hope they find the funding.
Yeah.
This kind of stuff is needed.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, we'll move into committee reports and updates. New Development Committee, I don't think we have anything.
No, I've not had the capacity to manage an agenda for a while, and I don't think any other member has been able to serve as substitute chair, so.
Megan, can I ask about the comprehensive plan? Where are we at?
Sure, yeah. So we are getting the public engagement component of the comprehensive plan off the ground this summer. I've been working with my interns to coordinate, because we have many different opportunities for public engagement planned. And so we will be getting marketing materials out for that over the next coming weeks. So we'll be meeting with each of the city department heads, all of the city and council commissions. We'll be meeting with all of the neighborhoods, as well as hosting topic-specific stakeholder meetings throughout the summer and the fall. So we have a very busy schedule lined up, and so we try to parse it out so we didn't go totally insane, and also just to make sure that we have the capacity to do very effective public engagement as well. And so once the engagement is complete at the end of 2026, we will work on compiling basically a public input report and pulling that into recommendations for policies and basically a framework for the plan, having another big general public input meeting to discuss what we heard and how we'd like to move forward. And once we get that feedback, then we'll move into the phase of actually writing the plan. And once that draft is ready, we'll host another big public engagement event for people to review the full document. That probably will not happen for another year and a half. But it takes a long time to do really good comprehensive planning work unless you want to dish out a couple $100,000 for a consultant. So that's what my team of 1 and 2 interns is planning for the next year and a half.
This might be a good place to include the university in the way that I described.
Yes.
No? Why not? Anyway, thanks.
Neighborhood Revitalization Committee, any updates?
Amy, do you want to talk about what the West Side is doing on spring spruce up and stuff like that?
I can just share about the Neighborhood Revitalization Steering Committee that is happening with Habitat. So Habitat is facilitating a neighborhood revitalization steering committee with the West Side. And we're talking about, right now, ways to engage folks on the West Side about what they might want to see. And there's some talk about whether or not the word revitalization is the correct word. So vitalization is what we're looking at, or neighborhood vitality, just because it's more, it doesn't signify that things have gone downhill. Anyway, so we're probably going to do some outreach at Porch Fest, since there'll be lots of people in the neighborhood that day. And so we're really just kind of focusing on how we want to engage folks and how we want to talk about what this process is. So that's what I know. I'm sure there are other things happening. I have not been involved in those things, but I know that we're participating in Porch Fest. I think that we had some ideas of things to participate in terms of spring cleanup. I think that because most of the effort has been with Porch Fest and this neighborhood revitalization steering committee, that's where we were focusing our efforts rather than spreading ourselves too thin. But I think it's entirely possible that that could come up in the neighborhood revitalization process.
Yeah. Would you mind just, for the people who are here, explaining how we were approached by Ken and,
Sure.
what they've been doing and kind of what the goal is?
Yeah, so it's a process that Habitat for Humanity does nationally, and they work with communities to engage the neighborhood, whatever kind of geographic area that you designate, to engage folks and figure out what kind of projects or ideas that folks in the neighborhood are interested in doing. It's a 5-year plan. There's a small steering committee of about 8 of us, but that doesn't mean there isn't opportunity for anybody to weigh in. There'll be lots of public engagement kind of opportunities where we'll be out asking folks what they think and their thoughts. Even though it's coordinated by Habitat, it is not specifically on housing. It's anything that people want to see, with the idea that like people live in the West Side. And so there was one other thing I was going to say, but now I can't remember. We've had like 4 meetings, so it's very, very early in the process. But it's really nice to have Habitat, an organization like Habitat, kind of coordinate the agendas and keep us kind of on track. I think having that expertise come and guide us through a process that they've used in other places around the country is really helpful, especially in looking at what other communities have done when we get to that point.
I mean, could it be anything from lighting to new playgrounds?
Could be
to
anything.
Anything.
Yep.
It just needs to be a community-driven,
Yep.
Decisions
Correct.
about what needs to be done. And then they can help with grants and all kinds of other things.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's very exciting. And they chose the west side of all of Southeast Ohio to work, and all their region to work on, which is really
Yep.
pretty exciting. So
Yep. So.
excited about that.
And Megan, our city council representative, is participating in that as well.
Yeah.
Megan Almeida, a couple other folks. So it's, we're on the radar, and hopefully there's folks at the table who can help do stuff. Again, early on in the process, but it does fall under neighborhood revitalization.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I'd like to talk about the rental inspections processes subcommittee update. As I've described in the past, and I did talk about this in front of City Council as part of my presentation about the Affordable Housing Commission, I did send out the slide presentation to you all some time ago for your feedback. I made some minor changes and shared it with Shay. In any case, so that happened last Monday, not this past Monday, the Monday before. Basically, the subcommittee, we'll call it RIPS. That's what the IT guys are calling it, RIPS, the Rental Inspection Process Subcommittee. So right now, we are putting together a finalized, here's what we're doing from now till the end of the project, which should be hopefully December. That's the plan. But it's very comprehensive. We're looking at financial realities of the Code Enforcement Office. We're doing surveys of the landlords as well as the landlords and property managers as well as tenants. We are talking to individual experts and looking at best practices. And we're also trying to see if maybe there's some easier, faster, more efficient ways of doing some of the work, given that our budget is not going to expand for much. So how can we deal with the realities of what's budget possible and also what needs to be done, what people want? I will say I've gotten a lot of support from landlords, and the tenants I've talked to are very interested in participating. It is on Qualtrics. It is being done. The surveys were put onto Qualtrics, which is a software program that researchers use. It's not just your SurveyMonkey thing that's got lots of real features that you do for research. So we have 3 researchers on this, and what we want to do now is I think we've nailed it down, have a PhD student who's interested in doing the data analysis as part of her dissertation, which is cool. Again, this opportunity to do some of the legwork that we can't do or don't have time to do, and provide an opportunity for a student to advance their careers and experiences. To date, as of early this morning, we had 475 completed surveys by tenants, and a whopping 210 of the landlords, which is like 30% approximately.
That's great.
Which is an unheard of, fabulous response rate. We'd like to get a lot more. We're getting a lot of cooperation from the university. Thank you very much, Megan and other folks, for your help. I've reached out to different colleges within the university to ask if they would spread the word, talk to HTC and communications, et cetera, about spreading the word. We've got flyers around campus. And one of the things I'm going to do this week is go to the major apartment complexes and put up flyers. We've done a little bit of that, but not a lot. We've gone out to businesses, et cetera. So we're really trying to spread the word on social media as well. So we're hoping we get a lot more. That's actually a really pretty good response rate so far anyway, especially since we can't survey the people at Kershaw Green because they have a separate way of inspection, so it would kind of skew the results. We don't want to use the Metropolitan Housing Authority residents because they have a separate way of being inspected. So that brings us down a bit to the number of people who are living in rentals. But we feel very positive that we're on the right track. We've gotten a lot of cooperation from Tom Pyle, who is helping us now that he is the co-director. He's being very cooperative. We're going to meet with him on Thursday of this week again and talk about workflow and, well, how the system works. And we've met with him a couple times already. And along with some IT experts and people who really understand where we possibly could use some different software or use the software we have in a more comprehensive way. So it's like I said, it's a big project. We've got multiple people working on it, including several volunteers from the university and the general community who are interested in having this go forward. So anyway, if you have any questions, be happy to answer it. Happy to talk about it anytime.
Do we have anything else for neighborhood revitalization? Oh, neighborhood associations and activities?
No, I think we're.
Okay. And any updates from the Communication and Education Committee?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, that's, looks like that's about all we had on the agenda today. Anything for the good of the order?
When is our next meeting, or is in, like, May 2nd or 3rd week? I was just wondering if, I think we usually take June off, is that right? July off, okay.
But
Add that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I might not be here in May and June. So
Okay.
okay. Take minutes.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right. Does anyone else have anything?
I move we adjourn.
All right.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right.